I want to start today's episode with one question, and that is why is everyone in Bali doing Pilates and drinking matcha? Because what in the Eat, Pray, Love is going on? Welcome back to yet another episode of Go Figure. My name is Yamuna, and today we shall brain rot together. And speaking of Bali, off late, my entire IG feed has been full of it. People are either going to Bali, coming back from Bali, but they're definitely talking about Bali. Of course, we have to admit that, a lot of what we see on the internet of influencers or actors sort of going around having their luxurious vacations, it is fairly curated. It's for the aesthetics, it's for the gram, if not anything else. And somewhere the onus lies in us to draw the line between what is lifestyle content versus what is living, because there's a big difference. I'm guilty of it too. When you're sort of doom scrolling, you often forget that that's actually made to be a visual treat. It just does not happen to be a visual treat, and it's not your sign to book your vacation. Maybe in some cases it is, go for that vacation. We all deserve it. But that said, I don't think it's the norm to go on luxury vacations every month and sip on $10 espresso drinks or matchas or whatever your thing is. And for Pilates, I'm a little bit biased because I love Pilates and I think it's a game changer. It's the most wholesome workout there's ever been. Going back to the main plot, the norm isn't vacations and, $10 matchas and all of that. The norm is having a full-time job, which most of us do. What we see on the internet is the 1%, maybe even the 10%, because, we do have a lot more influencers than we used to even 5 years ago. These are well curated travel experiences and packages, and I'm all for it because, especially if you are a millennial, I think we grew up with the whole idea of hustle culture being the it thing. You know, you gotta thrive there, you gotta thrive here. And I'm like, just give us a sec. We just need a break, you know? And if you were to ask me, I wish I was in Bali too, sipping on mimosas, coconut water, wearing linen, and forgetting about emails for a sec and all the big girl responsibilities. Because if you think about it, women that way are simple creatures. We just want simple aesthetic things, most of which include some mimosas, a beach, and cute fits. And speaking of cute fits, I think vacations are synonymous to escapism because I used to often look forward to vacations, just to wear cute tops like crop tops, bralettes, whatever. Just because in India, I think at least I would not want to generalize, but most part of India, and this is a true lived experience, you have to constantly second guess what you have to wear. Is that going to invite more trouble? Do you have to carry a pepper spray? And the list goes on. But that said, I think vacations are just incredible. And I think a lot of surge in travel, especially female travelers of late, is also partially because of that. Because, we can be carefree and let our guards down for just a second. Not to say that the travel destinations are 100% safe. No places we constantly have to be cautious, not to even bring the whole gender differences here. And I think it's sometimes things are unsafe for both men and women, and that's that. And I think ultimately the truth is that these are all curated experiences for the most part. They're trying to sell an idea, a lifestyle, and a concept. And I think the onus is on us to sort of draw the line. In fact, in my early 20s, I thought everything I did has to be aesthetic. My wall has to be aesthetic. My kitchen needs to look aesthetic, which I had absolutely no control over because I never cooked. So, especially in an Indian household, you can love aesthetics all you want, but I think the reality is very different. And I think we have to take a step back from even trying to make this the norm. And I think looking at the 1% or the 10%, we often give in to the idea of, oh, you know what, maybe I'm not doing enough, right? So we constantly compare ourselves and our lifestyles and the choices that we make, the products that we use day in, day out. And this becomes what we desire, and everything we do and say, is to sort of get closer to that life that we see on the internet. And I think it's quite honestly not even sustainable. You can chase it all you want, but I think at the end of the day, it has a financial impact, it has a mental and emotional impact as well. Because if we are constantly comparing ourselves to everything that we see around us, be it in real life, or on the internet, I think we will always be left with the feeling of not feeling enough because there's always going to be somebody out there who has it better than you do, regardless of, which area of life. I think we should draw that boundary to say, some are just visual treats. I love the aesthetic and I'm going to consume them as pure entertainment versus there are some that are more inspirational. Like maybe I want to get back to a dance class because I saw such an insane choreography on the internet. Or maybe I should get back to painting. Or maybe I should try new workout class like Pilates. So I think you have to call it quits at some point and see what's realistic for you and what's relevant to you. More women that I know on the internet and otherwise, are getting fillers or Botox or, traveling to all the way to Turkey to get a nose job. Firstly, I think to each their own. It's truly their personal choice. If it works for you, if that makes you feel happy, if that helps you in any way, go for it. I think it's people's choice at the end of the day. I truly think that this is by far the quietest trend with the loudest impact. Let that sink in. And the reason I say that because one might think, I'll just get a quick under eye filler and it's not even going to show. Or maybe I'll just combine my work trip to Turkey with a nose job and not tell anyone about it, and let people perceive that it is natural. I think that's where the problem lies. The problem is never about doing what you want to do, because I think we are all entitled to our own choices and opinions about what we want to do in life. But that being said, the problem lies in the hush hush, the stigmatizing of it, the throwing it under a blanket and pretending that, it's all natural and nobody's gonna bother. It is a big problem than we realize because young girls today growing up, they perceive this as a natural beauty. So if you told me that I was 15 years old and this is natural beauty and I am constantly trying every day and everything to sort of, look that way, I'm setting myself up for failure because that's not even realistic to begin with. So I'm never going to be able to meet those standards. I'm going to end up feeling like I'm not enough because I can never meet that standard, which in reality is not even true. That's the problem, and that's the big picture, and that's something I wish we all understood and sort of took collective ownership of the fact that it's important to talk about these things. It's amazing that, we have a choice to get a cosmetic procedure done today, something we didn't have, a few decades ago. We have the accessibility, and most of us are privileged to, be able to afford that. But that said, this privilege comes with a price, the price of setting the narrative right, especially for the younger generations, and helping them set realistic expectations and not conform to beauty standards that nobody could ever meet. It's just that when everyone has the same cheeks or the same jawline, natural becomes anomaly, and that is a problem. I think we just need more people being more upfront about it, more influencers actually talking about it in a more realistic sense and not setting impossible beauty standards for the next generation. And that said, one of my favorite moments from Met Gala of 2023 was when Pamela Anderson just showed up in her natural look. Her hair was barely styled and it was a fully natural look. She had no lipstick on, barely any foundation, and can I just say what a powerful statement that was? And of course, the internet picked up on it. She made news headlines, some good, some really criticizing her for, not respecting the Met Gala standards and traditions. If you have followed her journey, you would know that, she was somebody who was heavily stylized for her role in Baywatch. She had to undergo several cosmetic procedures. Her life in the public eye was shaped by, the 90s beauty standards, which has been all about corsets and symmetry and all of that not so fun stuff, to be quite honest. Recent years as well, she has showed up for herself, reclaiming her image and really sort of stepping away from the unrealistic beauty standards of Hollywood. And we love her for that. And I think her Met Gala appearance was a true culmination of this entire shift. When a star like Pamela Anderson shows up at the Met Gala with a natural look, it's such an incredible, powerful message because it truly challenges the status quo and the expectation that women need to conform to the ideal, to the beauty standards. And switching gears a little bit here and thinking about it from an Indian context as well, I often wonder, are we getting any better in terms of promoting and empowering natural beauty in India? For the most part, I know India has a colorism issue. I was a victim of that because I grew up thinking fair was the ideal. Fair is the only beauty that can prevail. And there were several brands that I have seen growing up that monetized off of that, sort of making you believe that somehow your color is directly proportional to how successful you are, how likable and desirable you become. And I think that leaves such a big impact. For me, that stuck for a long time until I had some exposure to the regular world, where colorism is not a thing. So I think it takes a lot of unlearning from that as well. It's ingrained in your brain that somehow fair is pretty, dark is not. You're telling the society that. And I think that's so, so, so harmful. That young and vulnerable age, you perceive that as the truth because you don't know any better. And I was one of them because I thought up until my late teen years, I thought I had to constantly do things to enhance my skin, to make it brighter, fairer, or whatever that meant at the time. People around you made sure that they were reinforcing this idea and the concept of colorism on you, Because I used to go to family gatherings or weddings with my parents at the time. Then everyone had opinions. They would sort of, give me suggestions of DIY masks, or they would be like, oh, maybe you should try this cream or go to a dermatologist, as though something was wrong with me, where all along there was something wrong with them, the way they saw the world, the way they understood and perceived beauty and standards. If I had a nickel for every time I was told, maybe you should try a dahi and turmeric pack, I would have been the richest girl in the world. Luckily enough, I know for a fact that things have started to shift a little more because, as millennials also become parents, I think they are in a well informed position to not project this onto the next generations and make them feel inferior for something they have no control over. And secondly, you are allowed to look the way you do. That's normal. And that's my favorite part about New York because nobody gives a shit. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, but I did take the positive because I think it's so liberating when nobody gives a shit and nobody is there to judge you. Of course, there are racists, sure, but the irony is never lost on me that it was harder to be a brown person in a brown country than it is to be in a white majority country. And I love that our generation and the ones following us, we perceive beauty differently. And I don't think we feel the need to fit into a beauty standard. And of course, internet and social media plays such a huge role in it because you're constantly looking at perfect bodies and perfect skins, forgetting that quite often they're photoshopped or they have plenty filters on. And it's just what it is. Here's a fun story. So recently I was on the lookout for a spring dress for a wedding that's happening in New York next week, which is super exciting. I was almost about to add to cart until I saw the fact that it said comes with a Scandinavian scarf. It took me a whole second and I'm like, do you mean a dupatta? Because what in the cultural misappropriation is that? I think it's one thing for us to, see this on Instagram, people just randomly posting and sort of conforming to the cultural misappropriation, not giving any due credit to the origin of it. But it's a whole other thing when brands do it because you have a bigger platform, do a better job, period. I think you are just setting the wrong example, and it's so disrespectful when you do not credit the culture or the history and the origin of it. If the West and the white does it, it's suddenly pretty and Pinteresty, but if the brown does it, it becomes too ethnic, too cultured, too old fashioned, and all of the non fun stuff. And to call something as traditional and simple as a dupatta, a Scandinavian scarf, and to brand it, package it, and market it, I think that's just truly uncalled for. With that, we come to the close of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you for tuning in and see you soon.